Hey doing everyone, it's Joe from Living to Learn, just jumping in to make a quick community questions video that I've been looking forward to making. An awful lot of people on the community are now starting to get into making their own blades. Aidan Parry and Matteo Baldini. Sorry if I pronounced your name wrong, Matteo, but I'm known for it. I just really struggle with names. But they're experimenting with rat tail tang knives and in particularly Mora blanks and stuff like that. And I've noticed in threads and stuff coming up in the Living to Learn community, people discussing the merits, the pros, the cons, and the strength of tail tang knives, and in particularly Moras. I'd like to start by saying I'm no expert on the subject. I mean, I know what I know, and I would never refer to myself as that, but hopefully maybe this video can answer some of those questions in regards to tail tangs and the engineering behind them and stuff. I am no draftsman, as you can see here, and I don't have the editing software to roll in fancy shots. We're kind of just your average guys here and about, but I'll try and make it work as best I can. So the two types of tangs that you would have starting off is a rat tail or a square tail and a taper tail. We always have to, or I always like to anyway, pick a geographical reference, for want of a better definition, on the knife of where, so we can kind of see where we are and what we're doing, especially with drawings as bad as mine. So this would be the plunge line here. We call them plunge lines, and you would see your plunge line there. This would be where your blade would come up, and this would be your edge up along here. Now there's two types of the tangs you can see here. One is a square and one is tapered. The square one is usually recessed in and pressure fitted into handles, and you can affix various methods to the bottom of it, but this would be what most makers would go with because of the simplicity and the strength that it offers in its design, especially independent makers and stuff like that. This tapered one here is your more traditional shape that you would see, and this allows for a wedge type axe head fit. Plus also down the bottom, these are usually a little longer, which my drawing doesn't illustrate because it's terrible. But these are usually a little longer down the bottom, so you're able to get a tap and die out and thread the bottom of these, and you can affix mechanically the handle to the bottom of it, which causes a pressure fit. Most Puukos and traditional Scandinavian knives would have this type of tang construction. This would be where your bolster sit, and the only difference is, you know, because you're getting into kind of semantics and descriptions, they're still technically full tang blades, but when people talk about full tang, it means that you can see the metal. There'd be all this extra metal up here, and when you look down your blade, you'll see that it's a full tang construction knife with the knife scales sandwiched onto the side of them. These are still technically full tang, but what makes them rat tail tangs or tail tangs is there's usually a 2 to 5 mil, depending on the maker, step down off the shoulders of the blade behind the plunge line, where you would start your handle. So your bolster would usually appear here, and you would have various handle materials: bone, stacked leather, the world's your oyster, and then your various ways of fitting it. The pressure fit is kind of one of my favorites because it draws it all together. So they're your basic two shapes that you would see most makers do. And I like the affixing method here because the engineering problems that you would face with rat tails are different than you would face with full tangs. Full tangs allow for an awful lot of water jetting and stuff, and handle material removal. But the weak points usually are in and around the neck, just because sometimes this can stay exposed, and depending on the gauge, steel, heat treatment, it can make it very prone to failure from horizontal pressure. Now, there's Puuko makers out there that have this down to a fine art. They're able to recess these just a little bit into the bolsters. Check out the Dutch Bushcraft or Dutch Bushcraft Knives channel. They do be testing Puukos from makers all over the world, and they hold up just fine to knives of full tang counterparts. So this method here also stops, and this is important for getting into the Mora handles to kind of understand them. So you got your weak point here in your neck, and I say weak point, it would be the weakest point on the blade in its construction, not that they do fail there. Some do, some don't. And then affixing it with a tap and die or whatever method you choose to fix the square tang with stops the knife sliding out of the handle, because you got to imagine now you've got your wedge fit, and your knife is now sat into that handle. That doesn't, when you're doing jaw cuts, you need something to stop the knife to be pulled out of the handle, and that's what these fixing methods on the end effective. So here we have a very crudely drawn Mora blank, which is what most people seem to use for when they're starting off on their home projects and stuff like that, because they're cheap and they're affordable. And here is my crudely designed bushcraft black. I can't do the x-ray shots. I will try and get some when I'm in work, because Mora do x-ray shots of most of their handles in their catalogue and on their website, so you can go check them out. But I'll pick up some and see if I can get pictures, really good detailed pictures for the Living to Learn community. But the way that Mora have done this, knowing what you know about the weak points and having to stop it slide out, and the advantages of, or the disadvantages Pucos have, or rat-tailed tanks have, for horizontal pressure, the way that it's combated and to be kind of multifunctional is the weak point. Here's our plunge lines, again our geographical marker. The weak point is usually here in around the neck, like I said, would be where these go. So you may notice on your Mora knife, or any knife that you have that's designed like this, that the handles are brought up and over the plunge lines. So instead of starting here, where traditional makers would do it, they start up over the plunge lines, up here. So instantly you're adding this strength to the blade itself, and you're just leaving the edge exposed. And then by taking it back in here, the weakest point on this blade you would assume would be skinniest at the neck, where this tapers in for your pressure fits. So to combat that, by moving these up over the plunge lines, they now have recessed the weakest point into the handle, which you can see here. So there is no way that that is going to be affected by horizontal pressure. It's just not going to happen. You've got a full 10 to 15 mil of TPE or PP type plastic, depending on the model you've chosen, or encased around that handle. So you're not going to be able to force that up or in or through or around the handle, and you've got all the strength up here. So that takes care of this weak point, pushing it down into the handle, and their blanks are the same. So when you're making one as a blank, it keeps the weak point down into the handle and gives you the strength of the 2 and 5 mil drops that you see custom makers using. Now, most of the Mora blanks, you can see, I'll just put my thumb over here, when I get the x-ray pictures, don't come like this. They have this extended bit on the end, which again is crudely illustrated here. Most Mora handles just look like this. And the reason for that is because not only is it is a set into this polymer, but they have these indentations that people often ask me about. And what they are there to do is to make the tang become one piece of the handle. So when you can imagine now injected molded plastics, they're like liquid when you place them into it. So what that does is that sits into these notches that you see here. And that takes care of not needing a tapped and dyed bolster. It stops it flying out, it helps keep costs down, and it adds an awful lot of strength. Depending on the model, you will see more and more notches appear here. So you've got to imagine now this has become one piece of plastic in here, and that will stop that pressure of it coming out of the handle. So it acts like a kind of a pressure fit, and you don't need the bolsters. I have the cross drawn on here because any of you who use the classic wooden models, you'll see this in the bottom of the handle, and that's where they are mechanically fixed, like the rat-tailed tanks of old. So that takes care of pressure that way when you draw, cut and stuff, pulling it out of the handle. On the blanks you see these extra bits, and these extra bits are missing from these knives, and people often ask why are they, but they're on the blanks to allow you to tap and die it like you would a wedge tang. So if you're making a Puco handle and you want to just put your bolster on it and mechanically fix it with whatever method you choose, whether it be washers, nuts, bolts, pressure rings, that's what that's there for. So the blank gives you all these kind of Swiss Army knife options to allow you to kind of try your best at handle making at home. It's got the strength of a square tang in and around the collar. It tapers in for a pressure fit like a tapered tang would, and it also gives you the option, which you don't have to do, to be able to pressure fit the bottom of it. And that's why they are missing from their regular line of knives. And hopefully that answers the question of why they are, because once you take all these engineering factors into account, moving the shoulders up above the plunge lines, moving the weak point, which is usually the neck, further down into the handle, and these recessed holes here which allow the blade to become a total part of the handle and stop with the pressure of flying back and forth out. You can see why they don't need this at the bottom. It uses less metal, it helps keep costs down, you're not sacrificing strength. It's a Puko or Tang, a 24th century engineered jobby, and that's why when you see most Moras breaking, I mean, feel free, I'm not here to poo-poo on anything or any other makers, but you'll see when most Moras break, they will break in and around the tip, just like any other knife, full tang or other, or sub hilts or big bowies, or they'll maybe snap here from some heavy batoning, or they'll snap up here at the tip, but you will never get a failure in and around here, just like a full tang knife. Rarely does that happen. And this is why. It's all right to look at a picture, and I hope that's kind of, I'm trying to keep these videos under 10 minutes, but I hope that's a quick overview of the different types of tangs that can be used and why specifically Mora do this. It's not only cost effective, but it allows for an awful lot of strength, and I think that shows in what they do and why their blanks look so complicated. I can understand when people look at their blanks, they're like, oh, what's going on? But it's just to give you options. And because the blanks don't have to be produced specially, it helps keep the cost low. So they can just stamp these out, use them in their other blades, and then should you wish to buy a blank, it doesn't require special runs of machinery and stuff. So there you go, guys. And best of luck to Aidan and Mateo and all the guys who are starting down the road of trying their hands at making their own tang knives and traditional Scandinavian Puko type blades. And I'm always here for questions on it, and there's so many great makers on the page like Davey and Steve and stuff like that, that if there's always guys there to be able to help. So there you go. I'll have the next couple of community questions videos hopefully next week, and you guys keep doing what you're doing. Joe from Living to Learn out.